I'm Rachel Patterson. I'm a witch and a published author. My journey with witchcraft began with Wicca. At the time, that was the only real avenue of learning within witchcraft that I could find. It was pre-internet days, so I learnt from as many books as I could get hold of. I did all my Wiccan training and gained my High Priestess title, but I wandered. I veered off in all sorts of different directions. Anything I could get my hands on, really, under the paganism umbrella. And I guess I've ended up with a bit of old religion witchcraft, bit of hedge witchery, bit of folk magic. Primarily, I'm a kitchen witch, though. My talk today, I'd like to talk about witchcraft into the wilds. This is my kind of witchcraft. It's one that leads us through the wilds of nature, back to the roots and bones of witchcraft, a natural witchcraft that works with all the seasons and all the beautiful items that Mother Nature provides for us for free. No fancy tools or ceremonial rituals. This is all about working with the natural source. Mother Nature provides us with the changing of the seasons, within that the turning of the year. She also gives us everything we need to work magic with, from natural energy in the form of storms, rain, sunshine, to tangible items packed full of magical energy such as seeds, leaves and stones. So just a walk through the fields or the forest, along hedgerows or the seashore, will provide you with a whole host of natural magical items and will help you connect with the energy of the moment, whatever season, month or day of the week it might be. You can tap into the energy from any place. Each area or location will have its own unique energy. Even city centres will have all that magical energy. It's just a case of plugging into it. I actually have a silver birch tree at the end of my road, and each day I look at it to see how it is, what stage it's at. In the winter it's dark and bare, then as spring approaches I see the tiny green buds starting to form. Then they open, the green leaves start to show fully, and then there's the catkins. Throughout the summer the leaves are bright green, followed by turning to yellow in the autumn, before they float down to the ground, ready once again for winter. It's kind of my nature calendar. Add to that the plants in my own small garden. I can look out and tell exactly where we are in the cycle of the year. I wholeheartedly encourage you to get to know your local area, discover all the plants and trees that grow where you live. Just check in with all of the areas around you. It really does help you connect with the energy and ultimately your magic. When I first started my pagan journey, like most of us, I was presented with the Wheel of the Year. I spent ages trying to remember the dates and learn the names and the correspondences, and even to this day I have to stop and think about it when trying to recall what's what. Mainly because I have a brain like a sieve, but perhaps we've all had that problem, I don't know, might just have been me. I also started dressing my altar for each Sabbath, and I looked up all the correct colours, the herbs, the associations, everything that I needed to know to put on it. But then I started to lapse, and I realised I wasn't connecting with the celebrations, and what I was doing was just a mechanical action because I thought I had to. As my journey deepened and the years passed, I didn't worry about it so much anymore. I don't particularly work with the Sabbaths now, at least not the set dates on the calendar. Mother Nature has a big part to play in that. I'm pretty sure she's either menopausal or drunk, or perhaps even both, because the seasons are all over the place. I've got summer bedding plants in the garden that are still flowering in the winter. Daffodils and hawthorns flowering in January. It's all gone completely mad. We've had, this year in particular, we've had a really, really gentle winter. If you do follow the Wheel of Year and it works for you, please continue to do so. I'm not knocking the system. I just want to share with you how I work with the seasons. I actually left the wheel behind and I started working with, first of all, the energy of the seasons, but then it narrowed down and I started working with the energies of each month. And in actual fact, in more recent years, I even work with the energies of the week, or even down to the day. It's all governed by what nature and the weather are doing at any given time. I like to step out into the back garden in the morning, first thing that I do, see what the weather's doing. In Britain, it's usually raining at the moment. We like rain, waters the garden. But then I get a feel for the energy, and I know what I'm working with, basically, and I can see where it's at. I like to work with the solstice, the winter and the summer solstice, those kind of fixed dates. The equinoxes as well, to a lesser degree. But most of it I go with not by the date that's on the calendar, but by what the weather and what nature's doing. It's difficult if you're, let's say, Imbolc, 2nd of February. You look at that and the first signs of spring perhaps aren't even there. And if spring is late or it's early or it didn't arrive when the calendar told it to, was confusing. I was at the winter solstice and the weather was so warm I didn't even need a coat. So for me, it's about trusting my intuition, but also following the energy that's about me in the now, and being guided by nature. When you start to see the first shoots of spring on the plants, when the frosts finish, when you feel the morning sun on your face, or you listen to the birds and watch them building their nests and follow their progress. Nature's all around you, even if you live in the city, and I am on the edge of a big city. There's at least a tree or a bush that will give away the telltale signs of the season. Just breathing in the air each day and getting that feel for when spring turns to summer and summer to autumn. It really is a journey of discovery. Also for me, it's about connecting with the energy of the place, and even the energy of your ancestors as well. Every natural item that you find or collect will have its own unique energy, and that energy can be used for you to connect with. It can be used for spell working or even meditation. Each pebble will have an energy. Each shell will have one. Each leaf, each flower, each seed, each twig, each carries its own special energy and even its own individual character and personality. You can tap into and connect into that energy and find out what that item is happy to offer you or help you with. But I think it's also about connecting with the energy under your feet. Now, I do live on the edge of Large City. I'm in a terraced house. My house was built in 1920. So, crumbs, we're 100 years old now, which is probably quite ancient in today's modern world of how quickly they build houses. But before my house was on this land, there was another dwelling, and before that, and before that. Because I actually live near the sea, I'm on a city that's a port. So man has been living here since Neolithic times, really. So there's layer upon layer. We've had Romans, we've had Normans, we've had Saxons, and all kinds living on this land that I'm on now. So that's so many layers of different people and different memories. And you can tap into that in your area. And I think it's really important to connect with it, to get to know the energy, not just of your home, but the area that you're living in. It really will help you feel a bit more connected. If you're in a field, if you're in a farm, if you're in somewhere beautiful nature-wise, then it is very easy to connect and to feel that flow of energy. Perhaps not something that you have tried in the city, but the city still has energy. It's going to be pretty sparse, but not completely devoid of natural items, unless you want an old cigarette butt or a carrier bag, pick up the rubbish. But the land beneath the concrete will have that energy. And in fact, the concrete buildings themselves will have energy. It's probably pretty miserable energy, but it will be there. The field and the forest energy is obviously going to be very different to that of the city, but I really feel it's important to connect with it from where you are, from where you're dwelling. Whenever I've been to a group ritual, I always connect with the land first, and I ask permission from the ancestors of that site to make sure they're okay with a load of pagans invading their land. I think it's a matter of courtesy, but it also is to ask them to lend their energies to the ritual as well. It really does pay to have the ancestors on your side, particularly when you're holding a ritual. I do the same if I'm in a park or a field, or even walking by a hedgerow, doing the school run or in the forest. It doesn't matter where I am. I like to have a sense of what energy is around me. I like to talk to my house. I do hope I'm not the only person that does that. But if I leave my house, I tell my house that I'm going and how long I'm going to be going for. When I come back, I say hello to it. I might be insane, quite possibly, but it makes me feel connected. Please do be careful. There is only one sort of warning about this. If you are in a place that you know or think might have quite adverse energies, I did visit the site of the Battle of Hastings many years ago now, before I was perhaps fully aware of everything, and I opened up, and it was the most horrendous energy that hit me. It was quite overwhelming, really. So do be careful. Do make sure that you are psychically protected before you open up into anywhere that might be a little bit dodgy. Just the basic safety rules, really. But it is about connecting, and connecting is a big word for me. Just walking along, if you've got yourself open to connect with the energy, then it does make you feel far more alive. And if you're connecting with the energy of your house, with your home, with your garden, it really will help your magic. And talking of energy, the seasons all have their own individual energy as well. Depending on where you live in the world will depend on what your seasons are, how they affect you. Spring, obviously, good for new beginnings, communication, travel, thought, mental powers, the element of air, really. Summer is the element of fire, so it's good for working magic for action, passion, energy work, power, strength. Then on to autumn, which is water element, so it's good for emotions, love, psychic healing. And then winter, which is earth, so that's good for protection, grounding, home and prosperity. General guide, but that will help you kind of plan out what seasons are best for working what magic. Narrowing it down, you then get the energy of the days of the week. They've got their different magical properties as well. Monday, fertility, emotions, clarity, wisdom. Tuesday, success, strength, defense. Wednesday's a good communication day. It's good for changes. Thursday's a good healing, strength, prosperity day. Friday's good for romance, friendships. Saturday is wisdom, spirituality, cleansing. And Sunday's another prosperity, success day as well. So that helps you narrow it down as well. And if you want to take it even tighter than that, you can work with the times of the day. We're all familiar with working with the moon phases, I'm sure. But I'm a little bit impatient. So if I want to work a spell to bring something to me, rather than waiting for the waxing period of the moon, you can start with the dawn of the day. It's the time when the sun is rising, so it's the waxing. Noon is equivalent to the full moon. So it's when the sun's at the height of the day and it's at its strongest and most powerful. And then you've got dusk, when the sun starts to set, and that's your waning moon phase. So you've got all the phases in one of the moon in one day. So for all those who are impatient like me, it's perfect for working magic. If I move now to what I call wild crafting, so if we're working with the things that Mother Nature provides us, my little grown-up, sensible part of this, please make sure if you pick anything out in the wild that you've identified it correctly. Really, really don't want to be killing yourself or anybody. There are some dangerous plants out there. And also leave enough behind. Leave enough of the plant so that it can continue growing, so that the animals and the birds have enough to eat from, and so that the plant itself has got enough to continue to grow as well. There are some plants in the wild that are protected and are even on the verge of extinction. Please do your homework before you pick any wild plant. But everything else, pretty much fair game. Leaves that have fallen from trees, twigs, pebbles, stones, seashells, they're all fair game, and they all are brilliant for working magic with. There are a lot of specific ways for harvesting things. Flowers are usually better when the bud is fully open, but you know, sometimes needs must. Seeds, obviously, done on a dry day so that you don't get them home and they're all soggy and they go mouldy, because that's not only a waste, it's quite disgusting. Bark, if you use bark, I would recommend not actually stripping it from the tree. I can't bring myself to do it. That might just be me, but that's how it is. If you look around the bottoms of trees, you quite often find pieces of fallen bark. It is a useful magical item, but please bear in mind the poor tree. Roots of plants, obviously you do have to pull the plant up, but it is quite easy to pull some plants up, larger ones, and just take a little bit of the root and then replant them. Roots are best gathered in the spring or early autumn, so give the plant a chance. Leaves, obviously, they fall off. Most of them fall off, so you can pick them up. Berries, also a good magical ingredient. Pick them ripe. A lot of them are quite easy to dry as well. But, you know, Big Guy did be sensible about it. I dry everything possible from my garden. All of the seeds, the leaves, the flowers, everything that I can. And I literally just lay them out on a tray in the conservatory and dry them. Remember to label them. Some things, when they've dried, particularly petals, are completely unidentifiable when they're dried. So do make sure that you label them. Hedgerows are quite good places for finding things if you can get out and about. Do be careful of nesting birds. If you're in the city, you're more likely to find old crisp packets in the hedges, but the hedge is still there and it still has magic for you. Just, you know, keep your eyes open, really. Leaves in particular, Mother Nature provides a dizzying array of leaf colours and shapes which change throughout the season. I do tend to only pick leaves if they're herbs or if the plant's in my garden and needs trimming or cutting back. And do, if you are taking from the plant, do ask the plant's permission first. It's manners, after all. If a leaf's big enough, you can write wishes and petitions on it as well. But they can, you know, they can all be dried. Huge leaves are excellent for wrapping up charms or spells as well. They can be melted onto candles. Leaves are really magical because you look at them, they've got a thread of veins which reach out from the stem, and the whole leaf takes you on a journey, really. And each leaf and each flower and each seed and each berry carries the magic of the plant or the tree that it came from. There's a whole load of folklore about trees and plants. Do look it up if you're got a particular one that you're interested in. Seeds particularly are good for new beginnings of all kinds, but there again, each one will have its own particular or specific magic. Acorns, sycamores, conkers, horse chestnuts, sweet chestnuts, dandelion seeds, catkins, rose hips, they're all absolutely brilliant to use for magical workings. And they can all, they can all be dried and they all last quite a long time. Sticks and twigs are really easy ones. If you look on the ground under a tree, you'll always find a load of twigs there, and they're brilliant to use. They can be made into all kinds of magical items, from wands to fetishes to tiny little besoms. They can also be burnt in magical ceremonial fires or put into incense mixtures. Roots as well have a huge amount of magic, particularly earth magic, but they obviously all have their own independent ones. Mandrake, John the Conqueror, licorice root, angelica root, burdock, dandelion, ginger, of course, one of the ones you use in your kitchen. And don't forget vegetables as well. Vegetables are all roots, and they can be used in all kinds of magical workings. Potatoes and carrots make excellent poppets. Carrots and parsnips are obviously slightly masculine shaped, so they make good roots to use in fertility spells. You don't need to just use them in spell work. You can eat them to gain the magical properties as well. I like to work with blossoms as well. I do love to have, I've only got a tiny garden, but I pack as many flowers into it as I can. And I like to work with all of the flowers from it. Just a few petals works brilliantly for any kind of magic. I mean, most plants have a flower on it of some sort. Berries as well. There's the obvious ones: elderberries, blackberries. But hawthorn, holly, they all have berries as well, and they can all be dried and used in magical workings. I wouldn't recommend using them fresh, because in medicine pouches they will squish, and in witches' bottles they will go mouldy. So if you're going to use berries, I would recommend drying them first. I actually like, with a lot of these ingredients, I like to create a nature's wheel or a mandala from them. I'm not sure of the proper name of it really. I like to start in the centre, and it might be with a pebble, and then I work outwards, fan out in circles, or you can even spiral it, and use leaves and twigs and pebbles and shells, and just go with your intuition and create a pattern. And when you've finished, you've got a mandala or a wheel or a spiral or whatever it is that you want, all made with natural items. If you make it outside, you can just leave it there for the wind to disperse it. If you make it inside, just take it down when you feel that it needs to go. There's a huge amount of magic in that, and you can make them with natural items. Thorns are a particular one of my favourites. Rose thorns in particular. If you get a nice big rose plant, you can get some huge thorns on them. But brambles and blackthorn, things like that, all have thorns. Think about what they're used for. The plant has them for protection. It's against predators. They're sharp, they're defensive, they can pierce, they can cut, they can draw blood. Folklore actually says that blackthorn thorns were always used to curse. But then, folklore says a lot of things that we've since twisted to our advantage. That's the choice you make, really. Thorns are very good for cursing and hexing. Rose thorns work particularly well in fairs of a broken heart. In medieval times, it was believed that the devil pricked the fingers of his followers with thorns from the blackthorn tree. But they do have a positive side, and they can be used in spell workings for protection and also to dispel negative energy. Long thorns, such as those from the blackthorn, can be used to stick into poppets instead of pins, or used to carve symbols into candles. don't forget that poppets can be used for all kinds of intent, not just hexing. They can be used for healing, love, friendship, protection, whatever you want to use, really. You can also dip the longer thorns into ink to write your magical petitions. And you can use thorns in magic to pierce negative bubbles and also to break bad cycles. So something that we perhaps don't think about is really useful in magic. It is a favourite of mine. I do like to use them quite a lot. Another thing that Mother Nature provides us with is feathers. Quite often I'm gifted pigeon ones, but that's probably because I live in the town and there's an awful lot of pigeons. But I've got a few crow and magpie ones as well. If you're out more in the countryside, you'll find a lot more. And if you're on the beach, it's probably seagull feathers as well. But each feather carries its own special magic with it. Do be careful with feathers. Sometimes they do have little nasties in them. I like to pop them in the freezer. Just as a precaution, the cold temperature should hopefully get rid of any nasties that are lurking in there. Although do keep them away from your frozen food. You can also place the feathers in warm water and vinegar. 5 parts warm water to 1 part vinegar to 1 part witch hazel, and then you leave them to soak. But that's quite a lot of faff for me. being generally a lazy witch, I like to just pop them in the freezer. But feathers are the element of air, obviously, but they do bring change, focus, communication, concentration and wishes. And of course, depending on the bird that they came from, that feather will have particular meanings as well. Swan feathers, they're purification, cleansing, beauty. Magpie feathers are magic and divination, wisdom. Pigeon is peace, love and communication. So they've all got their own individual ones that you can use. I'm actually very lucky. I have been gifted several whole magpie wings. If you do find a roadkill bird, which is where mine came from, and you're not squeamish, you can honour the animal by using it for magic. If the thought of it makes your stomach churn, you can honour the animal by moving it into the verge or the hedgerow, because nature will do what nature does, and the animal will be returned to the earth and probably feed a crow or two as well. It's about this cycle of life thing, I think. It will return to it. If I do see any roadkill, I do send up a blessing for the animal as well. It is about honouring it. If you do like working with feathers, then one of the interesting things to make is a witch's ladder. In the late 1800s, in the eaves of a house in southern England, there were some strange items discovered. There was a chair, 4 brooms and a string with feathers in it. It was declared, obviously, that the house belonged to a witch. They decided that the chair was for sitting in. The brooms had been used for flying. Quite why the witch needed 4 brooms for flying, I don't know. one each for different lengths of flight, I don't know. And the string with the feathers in was referred to as a witch's ladder. It was a long string, and then it had cockerel feathers stuck into it. It was suggested that it might have been used by the witch to cross over the roof, to cause deaths, and to hex the neighbour's cattle. So there you go. Quite what an imagination they had there, I really don't know. But they also found a second string of feathers, which had newer feathers in, and a third which had feathers bound loosely with a skein of black wool. Definitely sounds like a bit of folk magic to me. At the time, it was said that each feather was a hex, a curse, or a bad wish. The witch's ladder would be thrown into a pool of water where the feathers would eventually pull away from the wool, releasing the curses. These would appear on the surface of the water as bubbles. Excellent. They are actually really easy to make. All you need to do is plait some twine, some wool or some ribbon, and insert your feathers. Each one for a curse, if that's your calling, but you could also insert the feathers into the ladder for positive intent, such as luck, prosperity, love. Insert a feather for each wish. Apparently, in the World War One, a group of women also formed the White Feather Society, and they would present a white feather to any man that would not join the military and fight, showing him to be a coward. This apparently came from cockfights, where a cockerel with white tail feathers would turn away from their opponent and show their white tail feathers during the fight, and were considered to be cowardly. So there is quite a history of using feathers in folk magic, really. They do hold a huge amount of magic. If you do find some roadkill and you want to preserve it, do have a look. Use Google. There's loads of information on how to preserve bird wings and legs and skulls and bits and pieces. It is a messy job. It is a very messy job. If you find the animal and it's really pretty yucky, leave it for nature. If it's relatively new, then you can do an awful lot with it. To honour the animal more than anything. If you want to make something with natural items, there is a magical item called a fetish. The word fetish possibly originates from a Portuguese word meaning charm or sorcery. Basically, it's an item that you fill with magic. You'll find versions of it in most cultures. It has a connection to the supernatural, to the spirit world. Sometimes people do trap spirits within them. If that's your choice, then I leave that to you as your decision. But other fetishes are just natural items or any items that have been imbued with magical intent. Fetish is designed and carried. It can be worn for any kind of intent. It can even be a poppet or just animal bones, or I've got one in particular that is a hagstone, stone with a hole in, a magpie leg and a feather just tied together. And that's it. You fill it with your magical intent and you've made your fetish. They are useful. You can be creative with it. Bones, images, spirit bottles, witch ladders, poppets, cloth, pebbles, twigs, feathers, all kinds of things, limited by only really your creativity. You do have to pay your fetish attention and you do have to keep feeding the energy. All the time you will do that, it will continue to work for you. As I just touched on curses and hexes, I would like to talk a little about those. I do believe knowledge is power. And if you know about curses and hexes, then you are forewarned and forearmed. If you choose to hex or curse, then that is, of course, your absolute right to do so. Just be mindful that there may be backlash. I'm not going to get on the soapbox. I'm not going to spout about morals, take the high ground, karma, etc., etc. The choice is yours to make and yours alone. Don't hex or curse someone if you are really cross or upset. Don't do it in the heat of anger. Don't do any spell work in the heat of anger. Let it die down first, because chances are it won't go right. It won't go how you wanted it to. There might be a situation where you warrant some kind of action or reaction. Just make sure that you've thought it through first. And make sure that it's, suitable. The action is suitable for the crime, really. Curses aren't for the faint-hearted, but don't take them lightly. Take responsibility for your actions. What's the difference between a hex and a curse? I'm not actually sure there is much difference, to be honest, just different names from different cultures. Although the general consensus seems to be that a hex is a spell or bewitchment. That's a good word. Traditionally, they could be good or bad, and a witch would often be paid to provide one. We're going back away now. Curse, however, is a malevolent spell that is cast with the purpose of inflicting harm upon another. Curses could be written or spoken. Objects can also be cursed with bad luck, misfortune, etc., and even death, should you wish it. Basically, it's a willful direction of negative energy towards someone with the intent to harm. Usually, hexes and curses take some time to develop and build up slowly. if you are well shielded and protected personally, you are very unlikely to become the victim of a hex yourself. And I do think it happens a lot less frequently than people believe. I do get contact an awful lot from people saying they've been cursed and hexed, and quite a lot of the time it's in their heads. And I actually think that's quite a big part of cursing and hexing. If you think you've been cursed, then you add to the negative energy. You're actually providing that energy yourself. And sometimes it spirals out of control because you've added to it. I do think binding is worth looking at. If you are looking at some kind of action towards a person, trying to stop them from no longer harming you, then binding is a good option. I have found it works particularly well. It doesn't actually harm the person, but it stops them from hurting or harassing you. Bear in mind that this spell, and pretty much any spell actually, involves free will. If you are binding someone, you are taking away their free will, so use with caution. But a binding spell can be really simple. You need an object that represents the person. Could be a puppet, could be a photograph, could be just a potato that you decide is the person. And then you bind it. String, ribbon, ivy. I've actually found that sellotape works very well. You bind the object, visualise binding the harmful energies, speak your wishes, and then bury the spell. All done. Fairly straightforward, that one. Banishing is another idea. I have had a lot of experience with this. It has not always been successful. Like most spells, banishing is one of the ones that doesn't always turn out how you expect it to. When I first started on this pathway, I thought, oh, it's a brilliant idea. I'm going to banish all negative energy from my life. What actually happened was that I banished a lot of things that I didn't actually intend to. Negative energy comes from all areas of your life. We actually all need a balance in life. So do be careful, because banishing in particular may get rid of things and people from your life that you weren't expecting it to. And if you do banish negative energy, remember that it leaves a hole, it leaves a void, and negative energy just loves a void. So remember to fill that empty hole with positive energy. But back to the more interesting stuff, or perhaps that was more interesting, I don't know. Depends what you prefer. Back to the natural stuff. Soil, earth, dirt, basically. Brilliant magical ingredient. You can use it for all sorts of things, not just grounding. It's got so many brilliant uses. Pebbles as well, pebbles and stones. Hagstones in particular, if you find a stone with a hole in. Hagstone or a holy stone, fairy stones they're called sometimes. They are particularly good for magical workings. Bones go along with the feathers really, and the roadkill. If you do work with bones, they hold the energy of the animal. Now, I don't advocate anyone popping out and hitting a badger over the head with a stick just to use the bones. Please don't do that. But if you do come across some bones, or I have been gifted several skulls and various animal, not human skulls, various animal skulls and bones, they are a good way of connecting with the spirit of the animal and working with those energies. If you do eat meat, then don't waste the bones from your Sunday dinner. Chicken bones in particular make really good divination sets. Keep an eye out in the woods and the fields as well. I've found a few small animal bones when I've been out on walks. If you're very lucky, then you might find an odd antler that's been shed as well. Brilliant items to work with, and again, Mother Nature provides them for free for us. They've been used for centuries in magic, bones, so it is about tapping into things that their ancestors would have used as well. So brilliant things. Horseshoes, if anybody's got any horseshoes, they're perhaps not so often found these days as they used to be, but they've got so much folklore. If you're very lucky and you walk where there are horse trails, you might find one. Lots of luck involved with horseshoes. And if you are out walking and you come across a crossroads, obviously a huge amount of magic involved in crossroads. Brilliant for burying any spell work. Please don't do it at a major road intersection, because you will get run over. We really don't want that. And trying to dig up tarmac just doesn't work. But if you are in the woods, or if you have got country lanes, then finding a crossroad is brilliant for burying your spells. If you do only have city crossroads, have a look at the verges on the side of the motorways or the main roads. Any spells can be buried on the verges beside the crossroads. Please be careful. Please do be careful. Don't get run over. Pathways as well are absolutely brilliant. They all lead somewhere. So they're all new beginnings, they're all new journeys, and they're all about finding the right direction. Pathways all take you somewhere. They all take you on a journey. So they can be used in any kind of magic as well. If you do go out and about in the woods, then you're bound to find wild plants. If you are stuck and you are just in the city or the town, then you will probably find weeds. They always find a way, whether it's growing on walls or cracks in the pavement. There's a huge amount of weeds that can be used for magic. Chickweed, clover, good old dandelion, dock, nettles, all kinds of weeds that grow that you can pick and use for your magic. I also like to repurpose things. So if you've got tins or jars, they can all be used for magic. Keep the bit that's in the bottom, don't mush them up. So a honey jar is really good for bringing things together, dealing with a sticky situation. They're good for happiness, good for love. Vinegar, anything that had pickles or pickled onions, vinegar's really good for protection or getting rid of negative energy. You can use the jars without even washing them. Chuck any other bits and pieces in there that you want to, herbs or whatever you feel drawn to, and make yourself a spell in a jar, basically. If you have got cemeteries or graveyards near you, then graveyard dirt is excellent to use in magic. Please be careful. Please don't get arrested digging up someone's grave, because that really would be embarrassing. Get to know the person whose grave you want to take graveyard dirt from. Don't just pick anybody. You don't know who that person was. If it was someone that had a pretty dubious past, then you're going to pick up that energy in the graveyard dirt. So you want to make sure you know who was there and a bit about them. And also leave an offering. Silver coins are a traditional offering to leave on the grave. But if you don't want to actually dig the graveyard dirt from the grave itself, you can take it from the gateway that goes into the graveyard. The dirt that you find right by the gateway of the actual cemetery graveyard. Anything natural is good. Shells are brilliant as well if you happen to live by the seaside. Seaside plants and seaweed. Shells are brilliant. They all carry the magic of the ocean, so they've all got that water element to them. They represent the direction of west as well. They can be used in all kinds of spells, and they've also got a connection to the moon. And each particular type of shell will have its own magic as well. Sand as well, if you're on the beach. Sand is brilliant magical ingredient. It's actually made from particles of rock and minerals that have all been ground up. But it's good for standing candles in, from a health and safety point of view. But sand also represents time to me, and I like to use it in magical workings where time is important. It brings changes as well with the tides coming in and out. So it represents a cycle of life. It's cleansing as well. And sand also represents all of the elements. It is the earth, the ocean, the wind and the sun all together. So it's really good all-rounder. Driftwood, if you're lucky enough to find driftwood, that's a brilliant item to use as well. Not actually talking about physical items, but if you get to see a rainbow, rainbows have a lot of magic as well. You can't actually collect it, obviously, but you can use it for magic, and it appears in a huge amount of cultures in myths as well. 7 colours to it, obviously, and they can be represented by singing. I'm not going to sing for you, you'll be very relieved to know, but do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti are the 7 colours of the rainbow. So you can sing to bring that into your magic, and of course they represent the 7 chakras as well. But rainbows bring the magic of water, but they also bring sunlight and colour. The rainbows often appear after the rain, obviously, so it brings hope and promise and healing. And if you add in that they are water and sun energy, I think they work on a really emotional level as well. You can draw the rainbow to use in any of your magic, but you can also make rainbow water. If you put a little pot of water outside somewhere where you can where it can catch the vision of the rainbow, then you can make yourself rainbow water like you would with any of the moon water. And that leads me to puddles, which come after the rain. Yeah, common old muddy puddle in the middle of the woods, or the oily puddle in the centre of the city. Either way, they're really good to scry with. Literally take a few moments to ground and centre yourself, and then gaze across the puddle, and you can ask a question and read whatever images that come to you, or shapes, or even words that come into your head. So working with the weather as well is really good. Mother Nature provides us with a whole host of weather situations, quite often all on the same day. Brooms make excellent wands for working weather magic, as do umbrellas, open to bring the rain and closed to keep the rain away. Apparently throwing your broom up in the air summons the winds. Burning the broom stops the winds, and you have to bury the ashes for that one. I'm not sure it's really worth burning a broom for, but there's all sorts of folk magic that's connected with weather. But you can work all types of magic. Snow and ice particularly are really good. You can collect snow and allow it. You can keep it in your freezer, but you can also allow it to melt and keep it in a jar and use it as snow water. Snow will actually, it has a really special kind of magic. So it's got the magic of water, so it does the healing and the cleansing and the purifying, and it's very feminine. But because it's water that's been transformed, it also brings the energy of transformation. It's really, really magical from that point of view. You can write all sorts of things in snow as well. You can write things you want to get rid of, and then as the snow melts, it takes that with it and works the magic. Write your wishes and your goals in the snow. You can also use snow for banishing people or bad habits. Write what you want to banish on the slip of paper and bury it in the snow. As it melts, it takes it with them. If you don't have snow, you can use the freezer for that one. But all sorts of magic that you can work with it. And storms as well. Storms have such a powerful energy. If there's a storm raging above you, take advantage of all that magic. Rain, thunder, lightning, all of it can be directed into spell work. And it has a huge amount of energy. Although it goes without saying, please don't stand on the top of the hill in a lightning storm. Definitely not advisable. If you collect your rainwater during a storm, then you've got that energy saved as well. Rain, we're used to rain, but it is very magical and it can be very cleansing and purifying. Wind and air, obviously, the wind is mighty and it can be used for all sorts of spell working, to clear away things, to blow away things, and to bring fresh, new kind of energy for you. So it is really about tapping into all that magical energy that Mother Nature provides. It's just a case of looking and seeing what it means to you. Look at the weather on any given day and decide what magic that suits that energy and that you want to work on that day. Allow Mother Nature to provide you with natural items for free, whether it is a feather that you find at your feet, or a pebble, or a shell, or a leaf. It's all there for you to work natural magic with without having to spend lots of money and lots of time and effort. It's all there for you. Connect with the energy. Whatever it is that you find, whatever item that Mother Nature provides you with, connect with the energy of it. It'll all have its own personal and individual character. Even two shells, the same type of shells, each one will have a slightly different energy. Absolutely trust your intuition with this. And work your wild witchcraft. You will find it incredibly rewarding. And that's about it for today. So thank you so much for listening to me. That's my witchcraft into the wilds. Do experiment. Do go out and find out about your local area and everything that's around you. And do connect with your own energy of your land. Thank you.